Hey guys, my name is Steven. In today's video, I will be building a gaming PC. This one is perfect to run any game you like. It's also good to edit videos or run Android emulators. Unless you're doing something crazy like running all these together, playing a game and editing a video at the same time, running Android emulator, it might start getting a little bit slower. But other than that, it's perfect. And I'm not gonna show installing Windows in this video. If you want me to show how to install Windows, you can ask me in the comments and I'm gonna make separate video for that. But I'm gonna talk about the parts I chose. I'm gonna show you all the parts and I'm gonna go through the assembly process. I hope you guys enjoy the video. For the motherboard, we are going with MSI B450. For the graphics card, we are going with GTX 1650 Super, 4GB. This one is Overclocked edition by Asus. CPU, we have AMD Ryzen 5 3600. For the RAM, we are going with Corsair 16GB, DDR4 3200 MHz. For the hard drive, we are going with SSD 1TB by Crucial. The power supply, we have 600 watts by Thermaltake. For the case, we are going with full tower ATX by Thermaltake. 4 fans pre-installed, 3 at the front and 1 at the back. Alright, so first we're gonna start with the case. We're gonna open both panels, the tempered glass and the other side panel. We have the 4 screws here. We're gonna take off. I like to lay the case flat to take them. It's easier that way. This is the tempered glass. It's heavy. Now we open up the other side panel as well. We have the other 2 screws here to open up the other side panel. And this one you can just slide it out. Now from this side we have access to all the cables that we're gonna run from the power supply to the motherboard. So the first part I like to start with is the motherboard. I'm just gonna open the box. It's usually an anti-static bag, so you need to be careful when handling the motherboard. You have to make sure you just grab by the plastic parts in case if there are any charges and stuff that are gonna discharge to the motherboard. So the parts that come with the motherboard, we have the I/O shield. This we're gonna attach to the case. We have some cables here to connect to the hard drives. And then we have some other stuff like stickers and the manual. This manual is actually important because it's helpful when it comes to connecting some cables to the motherboard from the case. One thing I like to do is to lay the motherboard on top of its box when working on it. That way you don't damage the pins under the motherboard. Alright, so the first component I like to install on the motherboard is the CPU. So we're just gonna open the package. So this is what we have in the box. This is the CPU. And this is the stock cooler and heat sink that comes with it. If you look here, you see there's a thermal paste pre-applied. You shouldn't touch this one. You can just put it after on top of the CPU. Alright, so to install the CPU, we're gonna take it out of the package. You see here those pins, they are very sensitive, so make sure they don't bend when you're handling it. Make sure you don't push on them too much. And then if you look at the CPU, there is a small arrow here. That arrow should align with the arrow on the motherboard. So you're just gonna unlatch this pin here. And then you can just align it and it will fall in place. And then you can latch the pin again and gonna hold the CPU in place. Now to install the heatsink and the fan, we need to remove these two brackets here, and there is a metal plate at the back. This one, we're gonna remove that one. Now we can take our CPU cooler and we can align the fan cable closer to where it attaches to, and then we're gonna screw the screws of the heatsink to the plate at the back. So we just align it with it. Then we can start tightening the screws. Whenever you are tightening screws, make sure you tighten them cross pattern. So if we tighten this one here, we will do the other one across on the other angle. You don't need to make them too tight, just until it stops, and don't push on it too much. Alright, and now we can take the cable and route it as we like, and then you can connect it to its socket here. And that's it for the CPU. Alright, next component I like to install is the RAM. Here we have 4 slots for the RAM. 2 of them are red and 2 are black. So basically, usually they tell you here which ones to put first. So if you have 2 of them, you can start with the red ones. On this motherboard is easier because the colors are different, but a lot of motherboards, they are all black, 4 of them. So you have to look which ones they say to put first. Here they tell you which ones you put first, as you can see. So to install the RAM, we're just gonna take it, and these slots are designed so you can't put it the other way, so you can't go wrong with the RAM. So you can just open up the latches, and then you just put it in its place, you give it some pressure, and locks in. And then same thing with the other one. The RAM is responsible about how many pages you can open together, or how many tasks you can do on the computer together. So 16 gigabytes is recommended these days for all the applications, whether you're doing gaming or editing or whatever. If you want to go higher than 16 gigabytes, that's up to you, but anything under 16 gigabytes might give you hard times. So next we are going to install the motherboard inside the case. So we're just gonna get these cables out of the way. And you can see here there are 9 slots to put the screws. But before we install the motherboard, we have to install the I/O shield that came with the motherboard. This one goes here under the fan. You can see this space. And we have to make sure we align it properly. This So if we look at the motherboard, it's going to sit this way. So we need to make sure these align with it. And just clicks in place like that. Now we can install the motherboard. Now we can see all the screw slots are aligning properly. Now we're going to take the screws that come with the case. There are different threads. This one is the fine thread, this one is bigger. So it's the fine one that we use for the motherboard. First I'm going to install all the screws, not tightening them too much, and then I'm going to tighten them cross pattern. If you are tightening a screw and you see it's going too tight, don't keep pushing it. Make sure you open it back and then start again so it sits in the proper thread. Now we have all the 9 screws installed. Now I'm gonna start tightening them cross pattern. And don't tighten them too much, just until it stops, and just a little bit more. Now you might be thinking how we're gonna do cross pattern here, since it's not only 4 screws, there are 9. So you can start with the ones at the side, and then you can do the ones in the middle, from the bottom to the top. So I did this one on this angle, and then this one, and then this one, and then from the bottom to the top, and then from this side and this one. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So one thing to point out here, we need to change the connector of CPU fan to where it says CPU fan, because this one is the system fan. That's this fan at the back. Okay, so the next thing I like to install is the power supply. Just gonna open the box. So we got the power supply and all the cables that we need to connect to the components. And then we have the hardware. And the power cable. And some extra cables if we need to connect the older hard drives or something. So usually the fan goes at the bottom because that's where the vents are to breathe from. On this side there are 4 screws that we're gonna install. So we're just gonna slide it in from here. And then we are going to align the screws here. Once we start installing the screws, we're gonna hold it in place and then we can tighten them. Now after installing all the screws, we can do cross pattern and tighten them. Alright, so this is probably the most annoying part, organizing these cables from the power supply. But good thing these newer cases these days, they make it easier to route the cables, and there are different areas on the case to attach them there and stuff. So basically it's straightforward. We have these connectors. This one is for the motherboard, 24 pin connector I think. This one is for the CPU. It's like 2 of them, each one 4, but they connect together, and it's 8 pin. This one is the SATA cable for the SSDs and the newer hard drives. This connector is for the older hard drives. And then we have the PCI connector for the graphics card. This one is you can use 6 pins. Some graphics card they use 6 pins, some of them they use 8, so you can just use the other 2, attach it to it. But I'm gonna show you all of them when we connect them on the motherboard. So basically organizing these cables, it's up to you however you like to organize it, whatever path is easier for you. So I'm just gonna be organizing these cables, and then after that I'm gonna show you where they go, each one. Alright, so now we have the cables routed to the motherboard. These are the cables that we need to connect to the motherboard. So we have the 24 pin, and then we have the PCI for the graphics card, and then this one for the CPU, and basically the rest of the cables are for the hard drives and SSD. So we're just gonna use the ones that we need from these, and the rest we're just gonna shove them inside and organize them here. So since this case has got the LED fans, we have here the connector for it. So we're gonna use one of the SATA cables, SATA connectors, to connect to this one, and then we're gonna use another one for the SSD. This one we're not gonna use, it's for the older hard drives, so we're just gonna put it inside. Now we have these two, they are basically the same, so you can use any of them. Now since I'm using only one SSD on this case, I'm not going to use the other cable, so I'm just going to move that one inside as well. Alright, so now since we are on this side, we're gonna install the SSD as well. We will grab the 4 screws that attach the SSD, and we have this plate here that we can remove. We will attach the SSD to this plate and then just slides in, and we can connect the cables at the bottom. So for the SSD, we're gonna connect one SATA cable here, and then the other cable is the one that comes with the motherboard. This one connects on the other side here, and then it connects inside to the motherboard. So we are going to align the holes, and then we're gonna use the screws with the fine thread. So now we can just slide it in. We put back the screw that holds the plate. Now we connect one of the SATA cables to the hard drive, to the SSD. Next we will open one of these. And we can connect this one to the SSD on this side. So now we are pretty much done on this side. We routed the cables, we connected the SSD, we organized the cables here. So now we can put the side panel on this side, and then we move to the other side to install the other component and connect the cable. Just align the pins, you slide it in. And then we can connect the two screws here. Now we're gonna be working on this side. So it's easier to lay the case on its back again. on the other side I just put the panel there, and that way it's easier to connect everything here. So we will start connecting the cables on the motherboard. I'm gonna show you which cables we need to connect, and then the last thing we're gonna do is installing the graphics card, and we're gonna be done. So we have the CPU connector. This one goes in this slot here. So there is a certain direction. You can see this latch here. It will go to the back there. And then we will be connecting the 24 pin for the motherboard, this cable. And then at the bottom here, so this one is the system fan. We're gonna connect it here. And then at the very bottom we have the audio connector. This one comes from the case. It's for the audio jacks. We will connect that one here where it says J audio 1. And then we have the RGB connector for the fans, for the light. You can see there is an arrow on this side. That one we connected to the JRGB, and the arrow will be at the left. And then we have the USB connector from the case. This one is going to where it says JUSB 1, and you can see on the connector at the bottom left there is no connector, so that will align with the one that's missing. And then we have the USB 3.0. This connector goes to where it says it's difficult to see here, but at the bottom it says JUSB 3. This connector usually is a little bit tight, so make sure you don't push on it too hard. Just wiggle it a little bit and try to push it slowly. And then we will have these connectors for the power button, LED, and the reset switch and stuff. So these ones, there's a certain order you can connect them, and they connect to where it says JFP1. So with this connection here, the JFP1, you can see here, so we have the HDD LED plus minus. This one goes at the bottom left, and then beside it goes the reset switch, and the way they get connected is this way. So this arrow would be at the left side, and then at the top we you have the power LED minus and then power LED plus. Power LED plus goes at the top row to the left, and the power LED minus goes beside it to the second pin, and then at the top right goes the power switch just beside. And then also, if you look at the manual from the motherboard, they show you exactly how you connect them. So this is the diagram here and the numbers. You can, if we are looking at it this way, you can see at the bottom left is the HDD LED plus minus. There is a switch beside it, and then at the top is LED plus, LED minus, and then power switch beside. So this one is the SATA cable for the SSD. We're gonna connect it in one of these slots here. So now we have connected all the cables on the motherboard, and the only one that's left is this cable for the graphics card. So now we're going to be installing the graphics card. Before we install the graphics card, I just want to mention something. So when you're choosing the motherboard, you can make sure that the processor works with the motherboard, and here they tell you which generation the motherboard works with. So here it says AMD Ryzen 3000, so this means the third generation up. And also we have to make sure the motherboard supports the RAM. So there are DDR3, the older RAM, and this one is DDR4, the newer one, and there is also DDR5. So we have to make sure the motherboard supports all these components. Alright, so now we're going to be installing the graphics card. So for the graphics card, we have this slot here. That's where it's gonna sit. And basically you just need to align it with the slot. Make sure the slot is open. And align the graphics card. Align the pin. Actually, before we install the graphics card, we need to open this piece on the case. Some cases they have this bracket we had to remove in order for the graphic card to sit. So now we're just gonna align the pins and push it gently in until it clicks. That's it. So for this graphics card is the 6-pin connector. So we can take this one and we can only use the 6-pin connector. Just clicks in and that's it. So now we make sure all the parts are installed, and for the graphics card we're gonna be attaching the screws to the case here. Alright, so now we have all the components and cables installed and connected. So now we're gonna put back the tempered glass and it should be ready to boot up. So now it's time to test the computer if it's gonna boot up to the BIOS. So I have connected the computer to the TV and now we're gonna start it. Let's see. Alright, so now everything is good. We were able to boot up to the BIOS. So the next thing to do is to install Windows, and then the computer is ready to go. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this video helped. If you have any questions, you can ask me in the comments. And if you like the video, make sure you like it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for more videos. And I will see you guys in the next one.